Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. Naruto tiredly fell onto the hard bed in his apartment, pulling the Umbu mask off his face. All his muscles ached, not even allowing him to move. And for him to agree to run a race with Lee again. And after such a mission. Yes, Uzumaki, you are simply brilliant. Ha, and this is the hero of the Fourth Shinobi World War? The blonde was ready to swear that Fox was grinning in his cage right now, but he had no strength left to respond to the taunt. Leave me alone, redhead, or I'll have to use force. Uzumaki muttered tiredly. Almost 2 years had passed since the victory over Jubi, and during this time the demon had managed to get on his Jinchuriki's nerves quite a bit. Although Naruto didn't complain much, because a friend would always help in a difficult situation. Like, for example, when Sakura caught him in the women's public baths. Well, you furry sloth, show me your strength, the blonde's condition frankly amused Kurama, and he certainly wouldn't let Naruto rest. Or have you given up completely? Kurama, you know that you can't take me so easily on a dare anymore, Uzumaki drawled, closing his eyes and curling up. And it doesn't matter that he recently lost almost his entire salary to Sasuke on a dare. You see, whose pebble bounces off the water more times. Okay, that's not why I'm bothering you at all. The fox suddenly became serious. Naruto's face stretched in surprise, raising an eyebrow questioningly. Kurama chuckled to himself, amazed at the openness of his Jinchuriki's gestures. Why not? The blonde asked with interest. 50 kilometers from Konoha, I sense very strong chakra, and it is rapidly approaching. Moreover, this someone is not even trying to hide it. Kurama thoughtfully expressed his thoughts. What? Naruto screamed, jumping up from the bed. His muscles immediately began to ache unpleasantly, reminding him of his fatigue. Uzumaki winced. It seemed he needed to step up his endurance training again. Can you compare this chakra to anyone else in terms of strength? Well, I think somewhere on the level of pain, the demon answered uncertainly. The blonde sighed with relief. He could easily handle such an opponent himself. The fox chuckled arrogantly, understanding the guy's thoughts. Don't get cocky, blonde. This thing has a very unusual chakra. I think no one from the village even noticed it. Only Biju can sense this type. What such? Naruto was surprised, simultaneously pulling on his equipment and creating a clone. We need to report to Granny Tsunade. So pure, Kurama explained patiently. Naruto nodded automatically, although he didn't quite understand his friend. In any case, we need to find out who it is. The blonde nodded confidently. Naruto, you're stupid. They're definitely trying to lure us out, the fox growled. Uzumaki smiled guiltily. I know, but we can't let him near the village. Besides, Bie-chan will probably send help. Without even listening to Kurama's reproaches any longer, the blonde jumped out the window and, switching to Bijou mode, rushed in the right direction. The wind hit the guy's dark face, his long hair fluttered in the wind. Uzumaki was now considered almost the standard of beauty in Konoha, whose fan club was surpassed only by Uchiha, and even then only slightly. In a year and a half in Anbu, Naruto grew even more and developed muscles. Even Tsunade sometimes glanced at him. Secretly. Well, almost. Her interest became especially obvious when the woman managed to drag Uzumaki to a bar. Stop daydreaming, snorted Kyubi. In 30 seconds you'll collide. So fast? Naruto only managed to scream before a figure in a black cloak with blue circles appeared from the forest. Well, or a little earlier. The fox snorted nervously. Naruto didn't answer. The man in the cloak and the blonde froze in front of each other. As Kurama had said, Naruto couldn't sense the chakra of this. Maybe the man? The hood hid his entire face. The opponent had a straight posture and a firm gait. Uzumaki realized this by how firmly the man in front of him stood on his feet, a little springy in the knees, with his feet whole. Who are you? Uzumaki asked firmly. His interlocutor did not answer. He only raised a deathly pale hand, making the blonde tense up in anticipation of the technique. But it did not follow. Someone threw off his hood, revealing an unruly shock of red hair. white, unseeing eyes were lost in an equally pale face. The man's face did not express any emotions. Somehow this parody of a zombie doesn't inspire confidence in me, the fox muttered, frowning. Uzumaki silently agreed. I'll ask again, who are you? There was no answer. The silent man began to form an unfamiliar combination of seals at lightning speed. Naruto jumped back, creating a Rasengan and rushing to attack the red-haired man. He, in turn, did not even try to dodge. The Rasengan hit right in the solar plexus, tearing skin and muscles, crushing bones, but the shinobi did not stop forming the seal. Damn it, Naruto, forget about this masochist. We need to get out of here. This is the soul teleportation technique. The fox barked in fear. Naruto, without hesitation, jumped away from the redhead. What kind of technology is this? I'll explain later, better run away. This technique has a short range, Kurama ordered. The blonde hadn't even managed to run 10 meters when he came across a powerful barrier. Cursing under his breath, cursing his carelessness once again, Naruto turned to face his attacker. If he couldn't run away, he needed to eliminate the source of the problem. But it was already too late. The guy finished making the seals, whispering something like, "Don't screw it up there." Then there was a loud bang, and a blinding flash followed. Everything around was immersed in bright light. Uzumaki even had tears in his eyes from the blinding radiance. Suddenly everything was plunged into darkness. True, the guy still had various bright patterns in front of his eyes for a long time, and finally he passed out. Birds were chirping outside the window. It was these birds that woke Naruto up, but he was in no hurry to open his eyes. First, he listened to his sensations, a light summer breeze, the distant hubbub of people, the smell of baking from below quite harmless. Now his body. He tried to move his fingers, his hand, but as soon as it came to his feet, Uzumaki froze in surprise. He simply didn't have them, that is, the guy didn't feel them. What the hell? The blonde screamed softly. He opened his eyes abruptly, squinting from the bright light. Uzumaki tried to sit up on the bed, but his body simply refused to obey. With difficulty, he raised himself up on his elbows. Internally, the ANBU captain was already prepared for the worst for some reason. His legs had been amputated. Leaning on a mountain of pillows, Naruto abruptly threw off the thin blanket there were legs. Very thin, pale, without a hint of muscle, with translucent blue veins, but there. He breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that there were no wounds on his legs, which meant that something was wrong inside. Kurama, can you hear me? The Jinchuriki begged silently. What was the demon saying? The transmigration of souls? What if he was here without the Kyuubi? Then he would definitely fall into depression, since the fox was the only one supporting him lately. Naruto. What do you want? I'm sleeping, the fox said sleepily. It seemed he really was sleeping. You know what this technique is, right? Explain. The blonde's voice slid with a commanding tone. Kurama winced in displeasure. Noticing his friend's reaction, Naruto snorted. Please. Okay, you've convinced me, the fox chuckled smugly. Look in the mirror, our souls have been thrown into another body, and it seems, into another world as well. Another world? What nonsense, Kurama? The blonde nervously looked around in search of the treasured mirror. And there it was, on the wall to the right of him, covered with pink butterflies and flowers. Did he end up in the girl's body? Anything but that. No, he got away with it. A pale, fair-haired boy with sunken cheeks stared at him from the mirror. His blue eyes stood out brightly against his face. He looked like Naruto himself as a child, only his skin wasn't as tanned and his eyes didn't sparkle as playfully. Instead of arms, 2 thin sticks hung down. Perfect. That's a fact, blonde, Kyuubi said sympathetically. You can't even beat a genin now. Naruto shuddered. This was just awful. He had long been accustomed to his strong body, and now he had this. He could barely even feel his chakra. It would only be enough for a few kawarimi. Tell me, Ku. Naruto's voice trembled. Can you heal me? It looks like there's something wrong with your spine. The nerves are pinched or dead, I can't figure out exactly, thought the fox. Yes, I think I can fix it. Although it would be much better if, for example, Tsunade treated you, otherwise I'll mess something up. Cool, you're the best! The blonde rejoiced. The fox smiled with the edges of his mouth, slightly revealing his snow-white fangs. I know. Having calmed down, Naruto was finally able to take a closer look at the room. Stuffed toys, covered in dust, were scattered in all corners of the bright room. It looked like the previous owner of this body hadn't played with them. On the bedside shelf were dried tulips and muddy water. A bit gloomy. Hey, is anyone home? Uzumaki remembered that there was a pleasant smell coming from the kitchen, so there should be someone there. Besides, he was really hungry. There was no answer. Hey! The floorboards creaked and the door swung open. A woman with long red hair appeared in the doorway, holding an iron ladle in her hands. Her gaze focused on Naruto with concern. Then a joyful smile lit up Kushina's beautiful face. Naruto, you're awake! The woman rejoiced, running up to her son's bed. The blonde exhaled loudly. Could it really be his? Mom, in a whisper. Kushina froze, watching her son with disbelief. In her boy's eyes, for the first time in a long time, real love flashed, and it was very pleasant. Did you want something? Uzumaki said quietly, afraid to scare her son. After all, ever since Naruto stopped walking, his eyes seemed empty. Can I eat? The guy asked uncertainly. The woman's reaction scared him a lot. Did he say something wrong? Or was this not his mother at all? Although no, she didn't seem to mind when she was called that. Yes. Yes, of course. The food will be ready soon, just wait. She quickly turned around, disappearing behind the door again. For a moment, the boy even thought that Kushina was smiling happily. This is all strange, said the fox. A quarter of an hour later, Kushina brought a tray with legs and a bunch of different dishes. Naruto almost cried from such care. In his memory, this was the first time someone cooked for him. True, it wasn't really for him. The blonde shook his head sharply. The rest of the meal was spent in silence, interrupted only by the sound of chomping. Uzumaki devoured everything on the plates with gusto, even the burnt or oversalted food, since it was his mother who cooked it. All this time, the red-haired girl smiled contentedly, unable to rejoice enough about her son. 2 days ago, Naruto declared a hunger strike, and they were already thinking about force-feeding the boy. It seemed that now he was very hungry. It was very tasty, Mom. The blonde handed Kushina an empty tray. The woman instantly snatched the load from his hands. You know you can't lift heavy things, she said, frightened. You live here just like a princess. Kurama whistled. Naruto just mentally rolled his eyes. He himself never liked excessive care, but still it even felt a little nice. Yeah. And until old age, you will go to the toilet together at night, Fox grimaced, understanding the thoughts of his Jinchuriki. You shouldn't worry about me so much. Naruto was a little confused by the prospect of such excessive care. He needed to restore this body as soon as possible. I'm not made of sugar, after all. Just like sugar, Kushina bowed her head to the boy and kissed him gently on the forehead. And I'm worried about you. Naruto finally relaxed. It seemed like he just fell asleep and was having a wonderful dream. Tell me, is this really reality? Uzumaki responded, dumbfounded. Well, yes. One of the possible events, Kurama sleepily confirmed. Now stop messing around. I'm going to bed. After Kushina ran off to do her business, Uzumaki was alone again. He really wanted to jump up, run a few laps around the house, eat ramen, anything, just not this room. He raised himself up on his elbows again. Now the guy's goal was the white bedside table. Maybe there were some scrolls inside. Well, at least something. The drawer contained a pile of crumpled and straightened paper. Most of the sheets had scribbles on them that vaguely resembled people. Suddenly he came across something that completely threw the guy off track. An orange circle with red toe instead of hair, vaguely resembling Kushina, was crossed out with a black pencil, and instead of eyes there were holes. Excellent. It seemed that the old Naruto also suffered from uncontrollable fits of anger. How could they even tolerate him? Further examination of the box did not lead to anything useful. A bunch of medicines and boring children's books. I really wanted to wake Kurama and start chatting with him about all sorts of unimportant things, but disturbing the sleeping fox is more trouble than it should be. So I'll have to deal with it myself. The blonde's gaze moved to the impressive-looking library, then to the wheelchair next to his bed. Back to the library? And now he can't even go to the toilet without someone else's help? Come on, Ku, heal me quickly, the blonde quietly begged. There was no response from the redhead. After the third attempt, Naruto was able to climb into that ill-fated chair. Particularly sharp movements were accompanied by a sharp pain in the neck, but this was even better than a complete lack of feelings in the lower half of his body. After that, things went like clockwork. Uzumaki found practically the only scroll with techniques and delved into reading for almost 5 hours. It turned out that these were the basics of Fuinjutsu, the knowledge of which he lacked in their world. The most he had achieved in 18 years of his life was to seal a small bird. It was already closer to evening when there was a timid knock on his door. Captivated by his reading, Naruto didn't even hear the quiet sound right away. "Come in," Uzumaki shouted, fearing that the doors would be too thick and he would simply not be heard. But no, a creak was heard and the red head of a boy of about 3 squeezed into the room. "Brother!" Naruto froze, meeting the boy's gaze. Those same unseeing white eyes, except that his skin looked healthier. This is him. It's him. That same kamikaze who threw him into this world. But why is this redhead so small? And a brother? What relatives he has. The only thing missing is some kind of horny maniac or a prisoner. And what he can see? No, definitely not. This was confirmed by the tiny wave of chakra sent to Naruto. It seemed that the boy was an excellent sensor, and he acted completely unconsciously. "Brother," the boy called the thoughtful blonde again. Naruto even flinched in surprise. Noticing that he was being listened to, the boy decided to continue. "Mom said that Dad would be back soon. You need to talk about doctors?" After the last phrase, the redhead stared at Naruto, waiting for a response. Was he working as a messenger in this family? It was straight-up child labor exploitation. Naruto frowned a little. The blonde definitely didn't need doctors right now. What if they noticed how his body was regenerating itself? Then it would be really bad. Okay, let's improvise. Yes, exactly, about doctors. Thanks for reminding me, Uzumaki smiled amiably. The younger one froze in disbelief. In his memory, the elder one smiled almost for the first time. Realizing his mistake, Naruto tried to put on an aloof mask. Alas, Sasuke. But it seemed to not work out very well, as the red-haired one laughed muffledly. "Rest, brother," the boy said as he ran out of the room. "What do you think about this, Ku?" asked the Jinchuriki. He realized that the demon had long since woken up and was watching what was happening. "That your mother was cheating on me," snorted the fox. "But seriously? I have no idea." There was silence. Perhaps this ginger from our world was able to contact his incarnation in this one. Or something like that. But then the boy would understand that I'm not his brother. The blonde brushed the theory aside. The kid is 3 or 4 years old at most. He could have taken it all for a crazy dream. Or maybe no one contacted anyone at all and we're reading tea leaves. You're probably right. Naruto sighed heavily. It's too early to draw conclusions. Yeah. And stop sighing. It makes me sick. The fox rolled over in his inner world and snored demonstratively. It seemed he wasn't going to talk anymore today. And the most important thing was still not discussed, what to do about talking to his father. This was Minato, right? Was he really going to finally meet him? The real one, not just a consciousness briefly attached by chakra, or resurrected, but flesh and blood. The next hour, the blonde tossed and turned impatiently on the bed. He couldn't even concentrate on the scroll anymore. He had a strange feeling of déjà vu. He felt about the same thing when he went to meet Hinata's father, Hayashi Hyuga, only now it was much scarier. His entire lower abdomen twisted unpleasantly. And how was he supposed to understand this? These weren't even his parents. The doors opened smoothly and majestically. Yes, they can do that. And there he is, his father. Wheat-colored hair, bangs tied with a bandana with the Konoha symbol, the uniform of a Konoha Jonin. All this was already familiar to Naruto. But the arrogant look and hatred in his eyes did not fit with the Uzumaki's idea of his father. So, the old Naruto had a tense relationship with this man. "Hi, Dad." The guy risked speaking first. Minato just grimaced in disgust, not answering. The man walked over to the wooden chair next to his bed, gracefully sitting down on it. Kushina said you called off the hunger strike. He gave his son a searching look. Naruto would probably be very surprised, but 2 years in ANBU had done their job. His face remained completely calm. Hunger strike, right? Problem. I don't see any point in that. Naruto replied calmly. The main thing is not to screw up. At least not now. Too little is known about the outside world. That's how Uzumaki managed to christen everything outside this terrible room and the state of affairs in the village and in the family. I see. That's good, Minato responded dully. Now let's talk about your treatment. Uzumaki began to think hard about the situation. He needed to dissuade his father from appointing doctors or nurses for him, and ask him to bring more powerful scrolls, although this would be more likely for Kushina. I'm listening. Naruto hesitated. I want to stop it. What? An awkward silence hung in the room. These words cut painfully into the boy's consciousness. So that means his own father doesn't care about him? On the one hand, this itself will solve Naruto's problem, but on the other hand, it hurts to see disgust in the eyes of the man he almost idolized. Very much. We've seen 13 doctors in the last 2 years and not one of them could help you. Minato said coldly. No matter, his son is already 8, he'll understand. And if not, who cares? There's no point in continuing this. After that, the man stood up and headed towards the half-open door. Namikaze was sure that this was the right decision. There was no point in wasting time and money on scum. Running away? Naruto's voice sounded very cold, even with a bit of contempt. There was no answer. Minato's whole body shuddered, freezing in place for a second. Running away? What nonsense! A moment later, the man left the room, slamming the door. Left alone, Naruto mumbled something under his breath and hit his head on the pillow. It seems he has a very bad relationship with his father. Yes, it can be called a complete ass without exaggeration. Enough! I'll show them all who Uzumaki Naruto is. The blonde caught himself in time and didn't shout it at the top of his lungs. But really enough. The next morning Naruto woke up as rested as possible. Apparently it was due to the fox's chakra, which was working hard in the blonde's body. Next to the bed there was a small tray with fried rice wrapped in an omelette and a glass of orange juice. All this awakened a simply brutal appetite in the Uzumaki's tiny body, but he still decided to go wash himself first, and only now did he realize that he did not know how to do this. Should he call someone? No, couldn't he just brush his teeth? Himself? Damn! Naruto growled, and a long yawn was heard in response. Well, what is it this time? Kurama said tiredly. It seemed that the treatment had really exhausted him. And how am I supposed to wash myself? The blonde desperately drawled. The fox could barely keep from cursing, escaping from his throat. And he was woken up just because of this? Was this gratitude for his efforts? Naruto, are you stupid? The fox asked rhetorically. Don't you see there's a bowl of water over there, and a toothbrush and toothpaste too? How do I take a shower? The guy frowned comically. Now that's not my concern. The fox broke the mental connection and went to sleep after the hard work. After all, renewing muscles is not that easy, especially for a weak child. Previously, it was possible not to worry too much and send a huge amount of chakra through the channels of the Jinchuriki, but now he needs to control himself. What a red-haired ulcer! Naruto muttered. After some simple machinations, he was finally able to brush his teeth and eat. Only then did his attention fall on a small note, written in a slightly sprawling but beautiful handwriting. It looked like Kushina's. Sweetie, I'm sorry, but I can't wake you up today. Minato won't be back until late tonight. June went to Aunt Mikoto's, and Karui ran off to train early this morning. There's breakfast on the tray. Taro should be here at 9, so you won't be alone for long. Mother. Naruto glanced at his watch. 8. He had a whole hour. A perfect chance to look around the house. So that red-haired boy was June? And Karui was his sister? Uzumaki somehow moved onto the wheelchair. However, his arms were very weak and constantly buckled when the blonde leaned on them. Behind the door was a narrow corridor in light colors. The floor was parquet in the color of dark chocolate. Near Uzumaki's room there were 2 more on each side. It turns out that there are 5 rooms on the second floor, not bad. Naruto decided to look behind the first door. Green tones, a made-up single bed, a huge beige bear perched in the corner. This must be Jun's room. The next room contained a punching bag and a library filled with various scrolls with techniques. This meant that this was Karui's room. A real fan. Uzumaki shuddered. The boy was shocked by his own photo, pierced with shurikens and kunai. So Naruto was not welcome here either. The remaining 2 rooms turned out to be his father's office and his parents' bedroom. Naruto couldn't go into the office, but he did get a look into the bedroom. A large double bed, peach wallpaper, and a soft, shaggy carpet. Yeah, they were pretty comfortable. But Naruto was most interested in the small library in the corner of the room. There he was able to find several extremely interesting scrolls on Fuinjutsu, and quietly stole them into his bosom. Kushina wouldn't be angry, right? Well, now we can sum up the results of the sortie. In this family there are 2 people who hate him extremely, Minato and this Karui, one who sincerely loves mom, and one who has remained neutral, Jun. Yes, it won't be easy. Returning to the room, Naruto did not go back to bed. It was too much of a feat for him, and there was no particular need. Instead, he settled down near the large window, almost half the wall. The sun was shining pleasantly, making Uzumaki relax and grin contentedly. After all, he loved sunny weather. But he was not allowed to rest for long. There was a reluctant knock on the door. It was not a house, but some kind of a walk-through yard, by God. A guess flashed through the blonde's head that this was probably this Taro, about whom his mother had written. Well, let's get acquainted. Come in, Naruto responded resignedly. The boy had already realized that his personal nurse was about to enter. The doors slowly began to open, and a red-haired boy slowly entered the room. A slightly elongated teenage face, tan skin and swamp green eyes, all completed by a nose with a small hump. Naruto's gaze involuntarily returned to the teenager's hair. Red. Could it really be Uzumaki? And the amount of chakra is quite suitable, though still a bit weak. Just look at yourself. Kurama chuckled. Naruto just waved away the jibe, to which the fox clicked his tongue in displeasure. You're growing, you brat. Hello? Taro tried to smile amiably. It was Taro, right? The man's face lengthened even more when he noticed his charge not in bed. What, do you need to change the sheets? Uzumaki froze for a moment, considering the newcomer's last phrase. Change? Did this upstart really think that the boy had relieved himself in such a place? The blonde barely held back an angry growl. Noticing Naruto's reaction, the teenager shrugged his shoulders guiltily. You usually don't just get out of bed. Well, now he's up. The guy frowned. Okay, don't get so worked up. Taro put his hands out in front of him soothingly. I actually came to wash you. But now the stupor lasted a little longer. The left teenager will wash him. This is not Sasuke, who often took care of the wounded guy after particularly difficult missions. Although, he liked it better when Hinata did it. Fuck has come, comrades. Meanwhile, Taro had already begun to move towards the nervous Naruto. And with each step, the red-haired man's irritation and despair only increased. It's good that you're in the chair, the personal nurse said more joyfully. We won't have to move you. Look, Taro, the blonde tried to move back, but the wall and the cool surface of the window prevented him. Only one thought was spinning in his head to get rid of a potential threat. You probably get paid for this, but you are absolutely not obliged to do this. I can tell Mom that you washed me, and we will part on good terms. Do you agree? Taro froze in surprise. Of course, he himself didn't really like watching the Hokage's disabled son, but he didn't really have a choice. But lying to Kushina-san was tantamount to suicide. Having weighed all the pros and cons, the red-haired man still decided to trust the boy. Okay, you've convinced me. The teenager scratched his head and settled down on the empty, hard bed. Naruto even checked himself. Why was it so hard? There was a flat wooden board under the mattress. The blonde himself didn't remember what it was for, but Sakura seemed to have said that such things should be placed under people who were bedridden. But why such zeal all of a sudden? Oh, just like that. Uzumaki shrugged. I don't like it when some random guy rubs my back. Taro gave a muffled laugh. Understand. There was silence for a few minutes. Naruto was trying hard to figure out how to ask all his accumulated questions without arousing suspicion. The red-haired boy simply didn't know what to say. He and this boy had never really gotten along. Too thoughtful, gloomy, desperate. You're Uzumaki, aren't you? Naruto decided to confirm his guess. Well, yes. The teenager nodded, confused. What? Tell me about the clan. The blonde looked expectantly at his nanny. Noticing the distrust in the interlocutor's eyes, Naruto smiled affably. After all, this is my family. What's there to tell? Taro shrugged. You already know everything. Some of us moved to Konoha, leaving the maelstrom. Here they gave us a whole block, demanding in exchange monthly deliveries of various seals. We live well, although we occasionally have squabbles with the Uchihas. Taro winced, pronouncing the name of the red-eyed clan. Naruto even froze for a second. Could it be that the Uchihas were alive here too? There was no attempted coup and bloody night. Does that mean Itachi is in the village too? That means Sasuke shouldn't want revenge and won't leave the village. That's great. Why didn't you and the Uchihas get along? Naruto asked, more for the sake of decency. They're just all arrogant bastards. Taro raised his voice. The blonde almost burst out laughing. The feeling was too familiar. That's true. Naruto nodded importantly. Taro raised an eyebrow, but then gave a thumbs up. There's something about you, Namikaze. The red-haired man grinned. Taro left closer to evening. All this time the teenager chatted with Naruto, who was hungry for conversation. Still, this silence was not his thing. At about 6 o'clock the front door slammed, and a minute later, almost a herd of elephants rushed past it. Then the door slammed and everything went quiet. Who was walking like that? Uzumaki began to think logically. His father walked quietly and returned late. June was basically incapable of walking so loudly, and his mother would definitely have dropped in to check on her son. That left. What was her name again? Karui? Yes, something like that. Most likely, the sister of the previous Naruto. And it was good that this fury did not decide to check on her sick brother. Even without ever meeting the girl, Naruto had already somewhat pictured this Karui. An evil ulcer and a crazy fan of training. And this was enough for the blonde to start being wary of her. Are you chickening out in front of a girl? Kurama chuckled. Oh, come on. Naruto frowned. 5-year-olds scare me now. I can't even punch anyone properly. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do it like that. Bam, and you're healthy. Okay. Just let's hurry up there, the blonde sighed heavily. As soon as possible. The silence was broken by footsteps again, but this time they were louder, faster, and more sweeping. A moment later the door to the room swung open. Kushina stood on the threshold. Well, it looked like this woman would never knock. Only by force. Naruto, I'm back! The woman cried joyfully, running up to her son. Naruto, by the way, moved to the other end of the window after lunch, opening up a view of the calm river. Hi, Mom. The guy turned the chair towards Kushina. How was your day? It's boring as hell. The woman frowned. Your father gives me the most boring missions. He thinks I can't handle a couple of S-rank criminals. Mom, what if something happens to you? You can't go on dangerous missions. Naruto reproached her. The blonde was really scared, imagining the death of this woman. Maybe it wasn't his mother, but during their short acquaintance, Uzumaki had already managed to become very attached to Kushina. Well, you say that too. Just like your father. The red-haired woman smiled contentedly and hugged her son. I'll talk to Minato. We'll find a new doctor, and you'll get back on your feet. I promise. Her voice trembled traitorously, and she began to cry quietly, barely audibly whispering words of apology. It's okay, Mom. I think you should listen to your father. I've probably cost you a lot already. Naruto began to soothingly stroke Kushina's back. What are you talking about? Kushina raised her voice. What money? You are my son. I told you, everything is fine, Mom. The blonde pushed this beautiful woman away a little, and kissed her on the cheek. We'll get through it. She finally stopped crying and smiled encouragingly. It was the first time someone had such a calming effect on her. For the first time she was ready to take his word for it, although she knew perfectly well how delusional the blonde's words sounded. Yeah. We'll get through this, Kushina repeated in a voice hoarse from crying. Suddenly she froze, sniffing the blonde. What, haven't you washed yourself? Well, the guy scratched the back of his head guiltily. Uzumaki was forcibly picked up, undressed and thrown into the bathtub, after running water there. And now, Kushina was looming over him, radiating an aura of anger. How could anyone allow themselves not to be perfectly clean in this house? And their own son, too. The problem needed to be solved, and meticulously, and with all of Kushina's inherent pedantry. It's time to take a bath, son, the red-haired girl said menacingly. And why am I paying Taro? Now Naruto had already regretted 100 times that he had not allowed the teenager to fulfill his direct duties. After all, an angry mother was much more frightening. And judging by how many bath accessories Kushina took out, the torture would last forever. Yes, Uzumaki did not like showers and such nonsense. So he often washed himself once a week as a child. And there was no one to reproach him for this. The only thing Naruto recognized were onsens. Oddly enough, Jiraiya had gotten him addicted to this love. The blonde was distracted from his thoughts by a washcloth heading straight towards him. Well, that's it, there will be trouble and terrible torment. A week later, Kurama happily reported that his legs were ready for use, which the restless blonde took advantage of. Now he was training his lower limbs by walking around the room, but nothing particularly joyful was happening yet. Holding onto the wall, he was able to take a few steps, but then he fell to the floor with a crash. Databeo! Naruto cried. How can this be? Don't swear, blonde, the fox muttered discontentedly. Of course, I'm more or less restored your legs, but you'll have to build up your muscles yourself. But Kurama, it's not fair, the blonde whined. This will take a lot of time. Pfft, what a problem. Are you Naruto Uzumaki or a vanilla hysteric? The fox growled. Come on, do it. Yes, sir. Naruto chuckled, but the fox wasn't listening to him anymore. By the way, during the whole week of living in the Namikaze's house, the blonde never met this Karui. His sister came very late and left too early. And the girl herself never looked into the sick man's room. How much do you have to hate a person? Naruto also managed to get a little closer to Jun's simple friendly conversations helped, although not particularly intellectual ones, since the boy was still too young. And Naruto himself did not like abstruse topics. In the end, everything came down to conversations about toys and ramen, a love for which the guy was vigorously instilling in the younger generation. But Uzumaki wouldn't be Uzumaki if he didn't manage to quarrel with his father even more. Borrowing scrolls from his parents' room didn't go to waste. In the end, an enraged Minato burst into Naruto's bright room, threw a couple of contemptuous glances, gave his wayward offspring a dressing down, and put up a barrier on the library. True, Kushina still brought her son interesting reading material, fascinated by the child's sudden zeal. After several unsuccessful attempts, Naruto gave up trying to walk and started thinking about a training program. But nothing useful came to mind. The blonde always wore himself out, but that wouldn't work with this body. So he had to start slowly. Naruto! The sound of a breaking vessel was heard. Kushina ran into the room and picked up her son from the floor. What are you doing? And why aren't you in bed? Here the red-haired girl froze, noticing that the stroller was quite far from Naruto himself. And it was almost 4 meters to the bed. How so? Let go, Mom! The blonde pushed his mother away, but immediately grabbed her, losing his balance on his fragile legs. The second attempt was more successful. He was able to stand for a few seconds and take a small step. Kushina even gasped in surprise, to which Naruto smiled the widest smile he could muster. Well, Mom? The blonde asked, falling helplessly into his mother's arms. Still, it was very difficult. Naruto, the woman began to choke with happiness, trying to find the right words. This is wonderful. Kushina hugged her son tighter and kissed him gently. If she could, she would throw her son high into the air, and then spin him around in her arms. But there was no point in straining Naruto. To hell with him, he could endure it. She grabbed Naruto by the waist and spun the boy around the room, laughing happily. Yes, Kushina had a beautiful laugh. Ringing, kind and loving. "You're walking, Naruto. You're walking." "Well, for now only leaning against the wall," the blonde laughed. Since then, small crutches appeared in Naruto's room. Naruto also asked Kushina for small dumbbells and began to train his arms, gradually adding weight. At first, the blonde tried to do push-ups, but his body couldn't handle it. It was too early then. He also gradually strained his legs. All sorts of small exercises, bending and unbending, although this was also difficult. After another week, Uzumaki had learned to move around his room on crutches and decided to take a walk around the house. He hadn't been to the first floor yet, though. The first and most difficult obstacle in the little blonde's path was the stairs. Naruto spent almost a quarter of an hour on them. And yet, on the last steps, he fell, hitting his head hard on the wooden corner of the cabinet. And who thought of putting it right under the stairs? The blonde lay motionless for almost a minute after the fall. A terrible pain tore his head apart, and the stars still did not want to stop flickering before his eyes. But in his real body, he would not have even noticed such a blow. After several unsuccessful attempts to get up, he finally got to his feet. Sakura was right. Still, he needed to be more careful. His head may be cast iron, but not that much. Only now he was finally able to look around. Pastel colors of the wallpaper, the same dark wood parquet, and the omnipresent smell of some herbs. On a tiny table near the door there was a vase with white flowers, the name of which Naruto had happily forgotten. There were only 2 doors and an arch, apparently leading to the living room. Behind the first door was a dark storage room with mops, buckets, and various solutions for washing the floor. Behind the second door was a bright bathroom. By the way, Uzumaki himself washed himself upstairs. It turned out that behind his parents' bedroom was their personal purgatory. When the blonde entered the living room, he was almost bursting with curiosity. After all, he likes to discover new things, even if they are so trivial. The living room, for that was what it was almost twice as big as the blonde's room, and out of all the children, it was the most spacious. In the center stood a chocolate-colored sofa and several armchairs of the same shade. All of this was arranged around an oval glass table. A wall-sized window overlooking the garden and peach wallpaper created a feeling of warmth and coziness. Naruto could never have imagined that he would live in such a luxurious house. Suddenly the sofa creaked. Naruto was about to step back when a short red head of hair appeared from behind the sofa. The blonde froze. Maybe a thief? Or Karui? The girl turned her head sharply, scattering her short hair, cut into an elegant bob. Her eyes were bright blue. A cute face and pink gloss on her lips. Gloss? At that age? Isn't it a bit early, honey? Naruto winced a little. "Hey, bastard, I told you not to stick your head out of your room," Karui hissed. Her gaze stopped at the crutches, but the girl did not show her surprise. Naruto was taken aback by such treatment. Of course, he was used to such treatment since childhood, but it was still unpleasant. "What difference does it make to you?" Naruto frowned. "What difference does it make to me?" She rose gracefully from the sofa and walked slowly toward her younger brother. "And I thought it was in your best interests to obey me." The blonde almost threw up from these words. "Obey? Never in my life." "Fuck you," Naruto growled. The guy knew perfectly well that he had gotten too angry, but he wasn't going to stop. "Oh, how you suddenly became bold," the red-haired girl narrowed her eyes mockingly. "Do you think that he was able to stand on crutches, and already deserved my attention?" "Who needs your attention?" Naruto bristled, subconsciously preparing for battle, but it didn't help. After a blurry movement near his head, the blonde passed out. Naruto woke up with a headache and nausea. The sun was unpleasantly cutting into his eyes. And what happened? The blonde tensed up, renewing memories in his head. Every attempt to think was accompanied by great attacks of burning pain. Here he falls, goes to the living room, very beautiful, and then... That's right. A little girl hit him. Damn, the blonde sat up, clutching his head. It looked like he had a slight concussion. However, what a warm acquaintance. Looking around, Uzumaki realized that he was no longer in the cozy nest of Namikaze. The walls were white, strange devices were buzzing near the bed, and there was a terrible smell of medicine, typical for hospitals. If there was one thing the blonde hated, it was hospitals with all his heart. An instant desire to jump up and jump out the nearest window appeared. But Naruto pulled himself away from such thoughts. His health was not conducive. More carefully, without making any sudden movements, the guy sat down. The floor was too cold, causing the barefoot blonde to shiver. Reaching for the nearby crutches, he slowly stood up. Quiet, slow, calm, the blonde repeated to himself like a mantra. Then his legs gave way, and he almost fell. Fortunately, at least something from his former training in A&B remained, and he stayed on his feet. The door gave way easily, and Naruto stepped out into the crowded corridor. To tell the truth, the guy himself didn't know where he was going, but sitting in the ward was simply unbearable. Then Naruto came across the gaze of deep black eyes, under which deep wrinkles lay. Long black hair pulled into a low ponytail. Itachi. Uzumaki froze, looking at his older brother Sasuke, and could not believe it. He was really alive, more alive than ever. Good morning, Naruto-sama. The Uchiha bowed slightly to the Hokage's son. Only now did the blonde notice that Itachi had been wounded quite badly in the side. Without waiting for an answer, the brunette walked past. It was clear that his face was clearly a sickly shade. Wait! Itachi stopped, staring at Naruto with his mask of professional indifference. Yes? Just Naruto. The blonde smiled as widely as he could, almost putting his hand under the back of his head out of habit. Itachi was a little surprised by the younger Namake's joyful mood. Yes. Well, he still didn't call me by name, the blonde thought, frowning and watching the genius's back as he walked away. It's a shame. And I spent so much time with his crown brother. During Naruto's stay in the hospital, only Kushina and a few nurses came to visit. The blonde wrote off the incident as a fall down the stairs, not to admit that he was beaten by a girl. 3 days later, the blonde was discharged, ordered not to stick his head out of bed, which Uzumaki happily decided to ignore. To tell the truth, at the sight of the blonde, the jaw of Naruto's attending physician immediately greeted the not-so-clean floor of the medical facility. After all, it's not every day that a partially paralyzed patient comes in so relatively cheerful and healthy. The doctor then threw up his hands, crying out, "A miracle has happened!" After Karui had punched Naruto in the face, the boy had firmly promised himself to become much stronger. That was why all the training had been intensified almost twice. Now he would pump up his body and return everything to his sister in full. Naruto shuddered, realizing the identity of his desires with the desires of little Sasuke. It seemed that this senile man had infected him with something. Although the blonde trained hard, his energy reserves lasted for a quarter of an hour at best, and even then with Kurama's help that's one. And secondly, the fox periodically refused to treat Naruto, backing it up with excessive fatigue and the unfavorable local climate. Uzumaki himself understood that Kurama was simply too lazy to constantly look after the unbearable boy, and he was not a bit angry at the fox for this. Still, the redhead had already helped a lot. Despite all the difficulties, after 3 weeks Naruto was able to switch from crutches to a regular stick, and then, look, it was not far to normal walking. Today, the blonde decided to go downstairs for dinner together. Considering that Naruto here hadn't left his room for almost 2 years, a big event was coming up, not for the family, but for his mother for sure. June was too young to fully comprehend the situation, and Minato and Karui would probably curl up in disgust and bury their faces in their plates again. By the way, Minato, having learned that his son was walking again, even opened his mouth in surprise, but he himself had not yet seen Uzumaki's awkward gait. If Karui returns late, then his father is at home for 6 or 7 hours at most. He always quietly sneaks into the house, washes himself on the first floor so as not to wake anyone, and immediately falls asleep next to the peacefully snoring Kushina. Naruto once made his way into his parents' bedroom on purpose. What he saw there seemed like a complete idyll to the blonde. Kushina's peaceful face, lying in Minato's arms, caused a strong wave of emotions in the boy. Love, the desire to protect, to never let go, and also, he suddenly wanted to lie down with his parents. To feel the warmth of both of them. Of course, Naruto wasn't thrilled with Minato, but they were still his family. Just like that monster with gloss on her lips in the next room. Naruto pulled on the brightest clothes he had in his wardrobe, an orange t-shirt with a black whirlpool symbol and black pants with orange inserts. Now he could go to a family evening. Kushina had even managed to drag Minato out of work early, having learned of her son's plan. The stairs were safely passed, and now only a few steps separated Naruto from the living room. Gathering his courage, he entered the living room with all possible confidence and pathos, although the cane greatly impeded his movement. Fortunately, he managed not to fall, tripping, which often happened so far. The whole family was already gathered and, apparently, they were only waiting for Naruto. The sister didn't even turn her head towards the blonde, which made the aforementioned man's fists itch mercilessly. Kushina smiled softly, encouraging her son. Jun waved his hand cheerfully. Minato froze in disbelief, watching his son. He really was walking. Naruto took a deep breath. "Hello, family!" The blonde tried to make his voice sound cheerful, but there was still a lot of tension in it. Carrie grimaced in displeasure at Naruto's loud voice. The blonde only smirked contentedly at his sister's reaction. Minato put his impenetrable mask back on, nodding towards the farthest chair. Noticing her husband's gesture, Kushina growled, but said nothing. The rest of the dinner went on in a very tense atmosphere. The parents exchanged short, meaningless phrases. The sister smiled sweetly, ate with restraint, and deliberately looked in the opposite direction from Naruto, surely such a perfect kunoichi as she couldn't look at a reptile. When the dinner was already coming to an end, the blonde decided to intervene in the conversation with his request. "As they say, break a leg. I want to go to the academy," Uzumaki cried out decisively. The entire family froze, trying to figure out when they had gotten into the genjutsu. The only one who was in a normal state was the youngest member of the family. Jun didn't even stop chewing his cutlet. "Where do you want to go?" The red-haired girl narrowed her eyes angrily. "Ha ha ha, to the academy? You can't even crawl there yourself." Now Carrie didn't even try to hold back her laughter. It was obvious that Minato fully shared his daughter's opinion, but his composure did not allow the Hokage to show his emotions. Kushina, however, was not aware of her son's plans. But before the woman could start protesting, she was interrupted by the boy's serious look. "Naruto, you understand that this is impossible," Minato answered with restraint. "Why? Is it because of my legs? I'm already getting better, isn't that noticeable? I think in 6 months I'll even be able to run. I think it's the best option to send me to the academy starting in the new school year." "But Naruto," Kushina couldn't help but say. There was complete silence for a few seconds. "Do you want to become a shinobi?" Minato chuckled. "Well, you can start going to the academy whenever you like. You can finish the material you missed yourself. I'll do all the paperwork." It was obvious that the man was speaking with obvious mockery. And Naruto easily guessed his father's motives. A ninja has a dangerous job. The more dangerous the job, the faster you can kill your son. Although, most likely, Minato was absolutely sure that his son would not even pass the exams. "Come on, is father really that serious?" Naruto thought in surprise. "Then I'll have to disappoint him greatly." "Minato, what are you saying?" Kushina flared up. "Well, he's already an adult and quite capable of making decisions on his own," the father answered calmly. "Yes, Mom, that's what he wants." It seems that even Carrie was inspired by Minato's idea. "We have no right to stop him." These words seemed to have an effect on Kushina, and the typhoon passed the Namake's family safely. The woman frowned. "Then I agree too." Naruto smiled triumphantly. "But if your health deteriorates, you will immediately return to bed rest." "Agreed!" the blonde cried out joyfully. Since then, the boy began to go for short walks around the house. Only during the day and only accompanied by Taro. This did not bother the nurse at all, since it was very boring to sit in the room. Naruto was in 7th heaven. In this world, Taro was the only one with whom Uzumaki communicated calmly, so he often dragged out walks, and he was carried home on his back. One day, however, it happened that Taro was sick, and Naruto had no one to go for a walk with. He was pretty tired of chakra flowing through the channels, as a result of which a brilliant, in her opinion, solution came to the blonde's head. There was no one in the house, and there wouldn't be until late evening. Everything seemed to be calling him to break his mother's order. And what could possibly happen? And so, with his head held high, Naruto walked down the street. He left his cane at home because he didn't need it. Konoha was almost no different from the village the blonde knew before the attack. There were just a couple of strange buildings with the whirlpool symbol. Uchiha were patrolling everywhere, their Sharingans flashing. Even the Ichiraku ramen was in the same place, to Uzumaki's great relief. After almost half an hour of fast walking, interrupted by occasional falls, Naruto was exhausted. His leg muscles were filled with lead and refused to move. Somehow the blonde still hobbled to his favorite spot on the pier, which, unfortunately, turned out to be occupied by another boy. Sasuke would never confuse Naruto with anyone, but it was him. The dark-haired boy sat hunched over, his face frozen in an impenetrable mask. It was clear that the Uchiha was completely immersed in his thoughts. It seems to be a family thing with the red-eyed. These upstarts again. Kurama grumbled subconsciously. Just don't start, okay? The blonde whined. During his time living with Kyuubi, Naruto had heard so many stories that sometimes he was tempted to just break the mental connection with the animal. I didn't think so, snorted the fox. I have a lot to do as it is. Sleep, for example. Since the couple's arrival in this world, Kurama had been sleeping much more. This greatly worried the Jinchuriki, but soon everything became clear. The demon's chakra was being used up faster here than back home. Fortunately, it could be compensated for by sleeping soundly. So, now in Uzumaki's head, a seemingly brilliant, again, in the blonde's opinion, plan had matured again, which immediately had to be executed. Hiding his aura as best he could, the Jinchuriki ducked, preparing to throw. And so the gloomy Uchiha was thrown onto the cool grass and together with the Uzumaki rolled down the slope. The flight ended with an epic splash, and they both fell into the icy water. After all, it was already early autumn. What the hell? Sasuke yelled, grabbing a kunai from his pouch. The boy expected to see anyone but a blonde laughing at the top of his lungs. He vaguely remembered that this was, apparently, the Hokage's eldest son, since he had seen him before at ceremonies. True, that was 2 years ago. Since then, the boy began to leave the house less and less often, and then stopped altogether. Minato-sama did not disclose the real reason for such an event to anyone. Come on, it was fun! Naruto chuckled. Stop sulking, team! Go to hell, dope! The brunette flared up. Their squabble continued more or less like this. When it came to hand-to-hand combat, Sasuke quickly realized that the blonde's body was too weak for it, and calmed down a little. Now they just sat on the riverbank, trying to chatter their teeth less than their opponent. So far, it was a draw. What is your name, dope? Asked Uchiha. Naruto Yu. Namikaze. The blonde corrected himself in time. Uchiha Sasuke. The brunette grinned. Now the bad mood from the quarrel with his father had vanished into the distant lands. Yes, it's an action movie, straight face. Naruto stood on firm legs facing the academy. Another test. Almost 14 months had passed since he and Kurama arrived in this world. During this time, Uzumaki was able to return his body to a more or less acceptable appearance, and was even able to run across the roofs. The guy's skin had regained its golden hue, and his body was covered in muscles. Overall, Naruto was very pleased with the work he had done. Only the amount of chakra was a bit of a strain. Despite all the training, the SCD was giving in very slowly. Eventually, Uzumaki discovered the element of fire. Half a year later, the wind returned, but since Katan is now the guy's main element, the Rasengan should be put away in the far cabinet. And the chakra supply does not allow for much. Kushina was very skeptical when asked to teach Fuinjutsu, but agreed. After all, she was ready to split the planet for her beloved son. Naruto, overjoyed, made several seals, which Habanero furiously tore and threw away, arguing that the seals were in a terrible arrangement. Well, he, a small blonde, was no match for the great Uzumaki. And so, at 9 years and 10 months, Naruto was finally able to go to shinobi school. To Uzumaki's great regret, it looks like he'll have to go back to that boring place. Hey, who are you? The brazen voice was followed by an affirmative bark. Naruto chuckled, remembering the dog owner. I'm Naruto Namikaze. The blonde poked his thumb into his chest, turning to face Kiba. I don't care what you're. The brunette's face lengthened, remembering this last name. The Hokage's son, or what? Well, yeah. The blonde snorted. The guy didn't want everyone to compare him to his father. Minato was too dark and unpleasant a person. You think that because you're from a rich family, you can just show up in the middle of your studies? Inuzuka narrowed his eyes. He's a bit nervous, don't you think? Kurama said sleepily. Naruto just shrugged. Maybe he fell out of bed this morning? Uzumaki thoughtlessly said. The fox raised an eyebrow skeptically. Logic, it's either there or it's not, the red-haired man said cleverly. You're the second option. Screw you. Kiba growled, then yawned tiredly and rubbed his side. And you had to fall out of bed like that. As the boy disappeared through the academy gates, Naruto grinned triumphantly. Bite me, fox. Starting today, we'll have a new student studying with us. Iruka began in his usual cheerful manner. Introduce yourself. Namikaze Naruto, the blonde continued, picking up the joyful wave. Everyone present measured him with an interested look. The only one who did not react was Sasuke, since the brunette already knew about the guy's transfer. Still, they are friends after all. Particular fuss was observed from the girls who were not members of the I Love Uchiha Sasuke fan club, which caused angry glances from Sasuke's loyal followers. Under such pressure, most of the girls became embarrassed and looked away. It looks like even here troubles won't leave me, Naruto thought with annoyance. Sasuke chuckled contentedly, watching Naruto's twisted face. Still, the younger Uchiha had long since gotten used to this attitude towards himself, and it was funny to watch his little friend. Yes, Naruto's height, as in the previous world, left much to be desired. Uzumaki glared at Uchiha, but soon changed his anger to mercy. He climbed up to the place next to the proud man, smiling mischievously. The brunette grumbled for the sake of decency, although in his soul he was indescribably happy with such company. A little noisy, too much, but pleasant. And now the Uchiha fan club has turned its angry gaze to the blonde himself. A particularly angry aura has enveloped, oddly enough, the pink-haired monster named Haruno Sakura. Gods, why is this happening to him? A week later, Naruto was able to establish more or less acceptable connections with the class, not counting, again, a not-so-obscure fan club headed by a pink-haired leader and the company of a hot-tempered dog owner. By the way, compared to the version from the first world, Kiba turned out to be much more arrogant and aggressive, which made him a local bully. Oh yes, and he also ended up in the same class with Karui. Fortunately, as relatives, they were not in a hurry to be paired in sparring. And the girl's level was higher than Naruto's. She had already learned to use elemental chakra, for which she was considered almost a genius. Even Sasuke lagged a little behind in this regard. Karui used the water element. Naruto, of course, also launched small fireballs, but his chakra was not enough for anything worthwhile. Therefore, they had to rely on taijutsu. The blonde couldn't use ANBU techniques, as it would certainly cause a huge stir. But even so, Naruto was somehow able to resist most of the children. For this, he instantly rose in academic performance to about half of the class. There were also no problems with the theoretical part, although most of the examples that were calculated at the academy were completely useless in combat. How many seconds does it take for a kunai to fly, thrown from a distance of 8 meters? He would just stand in the middle of the fight and start counting. No way! Let's go out. Kiba's dark silhouette loomed over Naruto. There were several more guys and one girl standing around the brown-haired guy. The blonde looked up, meeting the dog owner's gaze. The whole class fell silent. Everyone understood perfectly well what was about to happen. Inuzuka had chosen his victim. I'm not bad here. Uzumaki shrugged. Still, he knew perfectly well who would win in this brawl. Alas, the circumstances were far from favorable. I don't give a damn, growled the dog owner. The other members of the gang surrounded the blonde and pushed him into the corridor. Naruto looked for safe escape routes the whole way, but there were none. One-on-one, please. But he had no desire to participate in the beating. Eventually, they stopped in a dark corner behind the school, not visible from any of the windows. The gang pretended to crack their knuckles, but for now they gave way to Inuzuka's fiery speech. Her boyfriend had apparently been cooking for a long time. "Newbie, you've gone too far," Kiba began. Naruto raised an eyebrow skeptically. "We decided to teach you a lesson. Firstly, you must not score more than 60 points on the final tests. Secondly, winning in sparring is strictly prohibited. Thirdly," the brown-haired man frowned, as if remembering something. Then Naruto guessed that this attack was not Kiba's initiative at all. "Right. You have no right to occupy the training ground for more than half an hour, and fourthly, you will do my homework instead of me. Got it?" 10 years ago Naruto would have furiously attacked the bully, but now he burst into laughter. It was clear that the only point Kiba had come up with was the last one. "What are you laughing at?" Inuzuka freaked out. "And who put you up to this?" Naruto responded through his laughter. The boy's face lengthened. "What? No one put me up to it. I did it myself. I mean, don't get cocky, shorty." The leader nodded to his subordinates, and they stood up straight. Wheeled. "And since when did you become a coward, Inuzuka?" The blonde became serious. In his memory, Kiba, although hot-tempered, fought one-on-one, defending his honor. "What did you just say?" The dog owner finally lost his temper. And how dare this Naruto talk to him like a friend? "Fight one-on-one, without these lackeys? Or are you weak?" The guy grinned. Naruto radiated confidence with his whole appearance. His gaze was completely focused on Kiba. The aforementioned ones tried to defend their honor, but Inuzuka stopped them with a roar. "I'll do it to you on my own, you damn upstart!" The dog handler rushed at Naruto, clenching his hand into a fist. Naruto dodged, taking a step back. The blonde's back hit a cold wall. There was nowhere to retreat. Kiba took advantage of the delay and tried to strike again, this time at the solar plexus. Uzumaki blocked and struck as well. The blonde's fist found its target. Now blood flowed from the dog owner's nose, whose rage was now in full swing. "Go to hell! What are you doing, Kiba, Naruto?" Iruka cried out as he ran up. The teacher was very scared, not noticing the students in the classroom at the beginning of the lesson. "To my office!" "How are you, dear?" Kushina ran up to her son and hugged him tightly. The woman was terribly scared when she learned about the fight at school. "I told you, you can't go to the academy." "It's okay, Mom," Naruto panted. His mom's hugs were made of steel after all. "I don't have a scratch on me." "Are you sure?" Kushina activated medical chakra just in case, noticing the bruises on the blonde's arms. "Absolutely," the guy smiled broadly. It looked pretty comical, since one of the blonde's baby teeth was missing. Kushina smiled too. "Then, for your courage, we'll go have lunch at Ichiraku." The woman noted with satisfaction the joyful gleam in the blue eyes. "Hooray, Mom! Let's go already." She patted her little hurricane on the light crown of his head. After 5 minutes of running races, which Naruto himself had started, they found themselves in front of a familiar building. Kushina rarely brought her son here, as she was a supporter of healthy eating, but the owner of the establishment, out of the kindness of his heart, gave the blonde a couple of portions for free. "Good afternoon, Kushina-san. Hello, Naruto." The cook waved to them cheerfully. "Hello, old man Tucci." The blonde plopped down on the empty chair. Kushina glared at her son for his inappropriate treatment. "I'm not that old," Tucci muttered. "As usual?" And yet Naruto is ready to get into fights every day if it ends with ramen. And in the company of his mother too. The next day Naruto didn't want to go to school at all. Of course, he never had the desire to just get up early in the morning and run to the academy, but now it was much worse. It was obvious that the showdown with Kiba was not over yet, and getting hurt was not at all desirable. Kushina could really put him under house arrest. But no matter how much the blonde wanted to stay home, duty called. After a hearty dinner prepared by Kushina, he had to get dressed and stomp to his destination. To Naruto's great surprise, Sasuke met him right at the gate. The taciturn brunette stood more gloomy than usual, leaning against a tree. Seeing Uzumaki, he peeled himself off and, radiating boundless discontent, went to his friend. "Yo, team!" Naruto greeted cheerfully. "Why so gloomy? And since when did you start walking me to school?" "None of your business, Dobe." came the cold reply. The blonde understood perfectly well that something was wrong with his friend, but he didn't bother him anymore. Sasuke will tell you everything himself. And if not, you'll have to find out yourself. There, get Itachi to talk or ask Mikoto. Father has been very nervous for the last few days. Sasuke began quietly, hanging his head. Mom has started to slip out of reality much more often and think about something of her own, and Itachi. You know, when I asked him what was going on, he smiled so strangely and said that everything was fine. He definitely lied, Naruto. The blonde froze, considering Sasuke's words. It was obvious that the Uchiha was seriously worried. So Naruto, it's time to shove your optimism away and think about the situation soberly. After all, maybe Mikoto and Fugaku were just arguing. What kind of nonsense is this? Did anything else happen? The blonde man gave his voice as much spontaneity as possible. Yesterday, the Uchiha Council was convened, so something serious must have happened. Sasuke thought. Oh yeah, man, you're absolutely right. Kurama agreed irritably in his mind. Do you think they're planning a coup after all? Naruto asked thoughtfully. Tell me, Uzumaki, what are you thinking? Snorted the fox. Of course, I can't stand the red-eyed ones, but even they are not that stupid. Then why act so obviously? And they seem to be loyal to Minato. Come on, your parents will definitely sort everything out. The blonde raised his thumb up. Just let's not have this unfounded optimism. Sasuke muttered. It was obvious that this would not calm the brunette down. Naruto made several more attempts to cheer up his friend, but all ended in failure. In the end, he simply punched the Uchiha, and a serious brawl began. Dobe, are you kidding me? Sasuke rubbed his eye, which was already starting to fill with blood. Well, at least you're not so gloomy anymore. Naruto chuckled, holding his aching side. Idiot, the boy muttered. I agree, Kurama chimed in. Naruto shook his head in resentment. I'll try harder for you here. No gratitude, the blonde snorted. Sasuke just shrugged, smiling at the corners of his lips. The mission to cheer up Mr. Iceman was accomplished. Kiba and his gang, to Naruto's great relief, did not come to school. The suspicious situation in the Uchiha clan could be put out of his mind for now, since he could not find out any useful information yet. Of all the problems, the only thing left was to find out who had set Kiba on, pushed him to attack the blonde. There were already some assumptions on this matter, but there was no evidence. However, the most unfriendly person in the class was still his sweet little sister, Karui. During the entire time they lived in the Namikaze's house, the girl did not give her brother a break. At first, Naruto watched this with slight bewilderment, but it seemed that Karui really enjoyed being the first to occupy the bathroom, steal breakfast, and ruin government kunai. Soon, bewilderment turned to irritation, and the blonde promised to have an explanatory conversation with his sister about who will win. But there was no time or energy yet. I announced the sparring partners. Hyuga Hinata and Shino Abirame. Namikaze Karui and Namikaze Naruto. Naruto didn't listen any further. His blood immediately boiled in anticipation. Here it is, the hour of reckoning. The children quickly split into pairs and found their places on the training grounds. The blonde even caught a masochistic glint in Haruno's eyes out of the corner of his eye. She was paired with Sasuke. But Karui didn't seem to even want to say a word to her brother. She simply headed for the only empty patch of land. And it didn't bother Uzumaki much. He'd just punch her in the face, and that would be the end of it. Don't you dare cry under your mother's skirt if I break a couple of bones, the red-haired girl said mockingly. I didn't even think about it. The guy stopped a few meters from his future rival. The exchange of pleasantries was over. After quite a long time of acquaintance, Naruto realized that he would not be able to win a verbal argument with Karui. The girl had too much experience. In public places, she smiled sweetly at everyone, but when she wanted to humiliate, only a few words were enough. Let's begin, shouted the skinny Chunin who was replacing Irika today. Both relatives instantly drew their kunai and ran. At first it was taijutsu, but realizing that she was inferior to Naruto, the girl jumped back a few meters and made seals. The ground under the blonde's feet turned into a swampy slush. The guy jumped to the side, but his foot slid on the sticky ground. Karui took advantage of her brother's confusion and launched several kunai at him. The blonde was able to dodge and at the last moment intercept the girl's leg. With a sharp jerk, he upset Karui's balance. The surprised and discouraged little sister was now sitting in a swamp created by her own technique, with a kunai pointed at her neck. "Need help getting up?" Naruto asked casually. Karui hissed angrily. "Again!" The girl stood up and shook herself, proudly raising her chin. "Come on!" Naruto chuckled. They took up positions again. A small group of children had gathered around the relatives. This attracted the temporary sensei, and he hurried to the children. "What's going on here?" A slightly squeaky voice rang out. A girl turned around at the irritating sound. "Naruto and Karui went for a second round," the little girl explained. "Karu just hates losing." "What?" the Chunin cried out. "Disperse quickly. This is a lesson, you will sort things out later." However, the Namikazes didn't even notice. Both of them only tensed up more. A staring contest began. Neither of them was in a hurry to look away. The seriously furious teacher interrupted this squabble with a few kicks. "Why did you do this, Squeaky?" Naruto winced. There was no need to hit him in the soft spot. Squeaky muttered a few obscene expressions to himself and led the children to class. "I won't leave a single wet spot of you," his sister hissed. Naruto just stuck his tongue out at the retreating girl. "Well, try it," the blonde giggled. "I can't imagine how you beat her. She's superior to you in almost every way," the fox said thoughtfully. "But she didn't take me seriously at all." Uzumaki shrugged. "She would have probably won the second battle." "Then why did you accept the challenge?" The red-haired man was amazed. "Running away is much worse than losing. You think they'll just let you into the Uchiha quarter?" Kurama raised an eyebrow skeptically. The blonde nodded cheerfully. "Well, yes." "At such a stressful time?" The fox continued, still skeptical. "Well, yes," Kurama chose to remain silent. "Oh well, I still need to pick up Jun. He's visiting Sasuke and his family today. Then there is a chance." The guard at the gate activated his Sharingan, but remembered that Naruto was still the Hokage's son and let him through. It took the longest to get to the main family's house. The Uchiha quarter was very different from the place Naruto had seen in his own. The prohibitions had completely stopped working at 16. A bunch of dilapidated houses overgrown with weeds. Here it was immediately clear who the big shot in the village was. Suddenly, the blonde was pierced by a painfully familiar feeling. Surveillance. But apparently not of him. They were watching Fugaku's huge mansion. And they definitely weren't using the Sharingan Naruto learned to determine this thanks to Sasuke. So it wasn't clan. Maybe Minato assigned ANBU? Then why was the chakra hidden so well that it was impossible to even determine the location? "Where is he, Kurama?" the guy asked nervously. "Yes, it seems to be under the veranda." "Oh, he's running away," the fox chuckled. "Then it's definitely not ANBU." Naruto suddenly had an unpleasant thought. Could it be the root? I can't stand those gloomy guys. Or a spy got in. "Naruto-kun, why are you frozen? Little Jun is already tired of waiting." Mikoto ran out onto that ill-fated veranda and waved her hand at the guy. "I'm on my way, Mikoto-san." There was a deafening explosion. Mikoto twisted strangely, thrown back by the blast wave. Belatedly, Naruto remembered to protect the woman, but it was too late. His head was ringing, and it was completely impossible to orient himself. "What happened?" Itachi ran out to the threshold, agitated. Somewhere behind him, the red head of little Jun was flickering. Sometimes it's even good that the boy can't see anything. Naruto had been sitting in the Konoha hospital waiting room for almost an hour. Right next to him sat a tense Sasuke. The boy gripped the wooden chair until his knuckles were white and hunched his back. A gloomy Itachi stood nearby. Although his older brother's face showed no emotion, rage and helplessness hung in the tense air. Mikoto was currently being looked after by the best doctors. Although the woman did not die on the spot, nothing could be said for sure. Fugaku immediately ran to the hospital to check on his wife after the incident. A short time later, the Hokage showed up. Then both men left without saying anything. "Listen, Fox. I could have prevented this, right?" Naruto breathed out guiltily. Just let's not get all self-deprecating, Kurama sighed. Noticing that the blonde didn't react, the beast continued. In this body, you wouldn't be able to do anything yet. You can't even use Shenshin properly. Thanks, you cheered me up, Naruto muttered. What am I getting at? The fox tuned into the right wave. Of course, you can't do anything for Mikoto, but those guys can attack the little Uchiha there, too, the fox mentally pointed at Sasuke, so we need to figure them out, understand their intentions, and nip all grandiose attempts in the bud. Hey Naruto, how are you? Is your brain not boiling yet? Nothing like that, the guy snorted. I'm just trying to figure out when I became such a wimp. I recognize my blonde. Under Uzumaki's angry gaze, Kurama nevertheless retreated. Okay, the blonde. We'll beat the crap out of them all. Naruto grinned, completely forgetting that he was in a hospital and that those around him would now be very skeptical about his joy. Sasuke gave Uzumaki a confused look, and Itachi grimaced even more. 2 hours later, Kushina was free and dragged the blonde out of the hospital. Mikoto's condition had more or less stabilized. The doctor said that the woman had several burns on her body, but they could be fixed. Have some tea. Habanero placed a warm drink in front of her son. Naruto nodded and smiled encouragingly at his mother. It's okay. The blonde noticed the worry on Kushina's face. After all, he should be 10 years old. You must have been very scared. Uzumaki lowered her gaze. Yes, Naruto answered truthfully. Then something clicked in his head. June! Where is he? He's fine. The woman smiled. June's upstairs. He's a little depressed, though. Then why didn't you go to him? He's 5 years younger. Naruto got angry. He had long ago accepted the red-haired boy as his brother, and categorically refused to understand why his parents spent so little time with him. But he doesn't see anything, Kushina whispered guiltily. But he feels it. The blonde stood up and headed towards the stairs. I'll talk to him. Naruto, wait! The woman called to her son. The blonde turned around too quickly. Sasuke will be staying in your room for a while, okay? What? The full horror of these words began to dawn on the blonde. Is this how he must now endure all his royal quirks all day long? No way. Why to me? Why not to Karui? Or to the utility room? The basement? The toilet? The closet? Naruto. Although, it is quite logical. They have already managed to penetrate the Uchiha estate, and the Hokage's house is surrounded by powerful seals. Kushina is from the Uzumaki clan, after all. And Sasuke should make a good ally. Already climbing the stairs, Naruto tried to think of a further conversation with his brother, but nothing came to mind. Well, let's rely on improvisation. True, most of the blonde's conversations with children ended in a powerful fiasco. Little brother, are you here? Naruto pushed open the door to his younger brother's room. The windows were tightly curtained, so the room was in semi-darkness. June was sitting huddled in the corner, his forehead resting on his knees. His red hair was perhaps the only bright spot in the room. Hey! June raised his head. Tears glistened in the boy's eyes. Mikoto-san is fine. Naruto crouched down in front of his brother. She might even wake up soon and you can talk. I know, the boy replied. I can feel her chakra starting to return to normal. At such a distance? The blonde was surprised. It's almost 2 or 3 kilometers. And Sasuke's mother has a complete pittance of chakra left. She was never a strong kunoichi, and she used up her chakra to strengthen her body after the explosion. Well, yes. I can feel everyone in Konoha. Even the houses, the rocks, and the river, June shrugged. But I was really scared for Mikoto-san. She cares about me the most. Even more than my mother. Don't talk nonsense. Naruto grinned. Mom loves you too. And you still have me. The blonde man patted June on the soft hair. But you're irresponsible. The boy objected with complete sincerity. And your socks stink. Truth comes from the mouths of babes, Kurama said wisely. They don't stink at all. And I'm very responsible. Naruto snorted, to which June laughed loudly, wiping away the last of his tears. Okay, the red-haired boy giggled. You're the best. Well, thank you. Naruto stretched his lips into a cat-like smile. June just shrugged, as if to say, "What else could I do? Then I'll be going." But the blonde was not allowed to leave by a fragile hand that grabbed him by the sleeve of his orange jacket. Naruto, by the way, bought it in a very cute news shop. "What?" Uzumaki asked. "Well, there, near Mikoto-san's house, I felt someone," June began uncertainly. "He was hiding his chakra, but he was still very strong." "So you spotted him? Can you track him?" Naruto grabbed the lifeline. He needed to prove that these were Danzo's henchmen, or completely disprove this theory. It seemed that the boy was even afraid of his brother's pressure. "No, I lost it. I think he changed the scent of his chakra somehow." June buried his face in his knees again. "Is that possible?" Naruto was shocked. "Well, yes. There are such seals, but you need to have chakra prepared in advance," the boy explained. "Yeah, what the Uzumaki don't come up with." And Naruto didn't even doubt that they created such powerful seals. "But you can't use techniques with this seal." "But it's still pretty cool." Naruto whistled. "By the way, do you want to play ninja?" "Yeah. Go ahead." Naruto collapsed onto the bed. June might have seemed like a reserved, quiet boy, but he had more than enough energy. Of course, such games were very tiring, but what wouldn't you do for your little brother? The blonde had even set himself the goal of making June a real shinobi. True, his parents weren't particularly eager to send the blind boy to the academy. But that could be fixed. If Uzumaki Naruto takes on a task, no one can resist. Finally, the blonde had time to think about the situation. Thought processes, of course, were not his strong point, but no one was particularly interested in that now. Maybe he should tell his father about this bomber? No, they wouldn't learn anything new anyway. It was no secret that this bastard was walking around Konoha without any problems. He couldn't make any guesses about Danzo, it would be too suspicious. But if the bomber used ninjutsu, June would be able to track him down without any problems. Well, and then he could be interrogated. "Hello?" Sasuke coldly followed the obligatory rules of decency, opening the door. He carried a small briefcase on his back. "Hello?" Naruto replied a little slowly. It took him a while to realize what the Uchiha was doing in his room. Sit down, I'll go get a futon." "Yeah." Naruto intercepted his mother before the stairs and took a pile of bed linen and a mattress from her. At the same time, Kushina's face did not leave a guilty expression. Maybe she was thinking about Juna? Naruto did not consider himself a full-fledged member of this family, although he was ready to give anything for them. And the blonde considered it almost his mission to shift at least some of his mother's care to his youngest son. "Tell me, Naruto, do you think I'm a bad mother?" Kushina asked as Naruto was about to leave. "Perfect." The guy smiled warmly. "But not for June yet." "I see." Kushina looked like she had decided something for herself. "Then from today on, you will train Fuinjutsu together. He is a great sensor, isn't he? Do you think June can handle it?" "Of course." Naruto grinned contentedly. "Team, I have a task for you." Sasuke measured the determined Naruto with a skeptical look. "Namikaze, are you completely out of your mind? What other mission?" The brunette lost interest in what was happening and stared out the window again. It seemed he had more or less recovered from the attempt on Mikoto's life. "Be the bait." Naruto grinned widely. "And this will help track down that bastard?" Sasuke frowned. June was huddled on one side of him. Naruto was on the other side, his hands behind his head. "TCH, Sasuke, conspiracy," Naruto hissed. "I told you, it's completely safe and maximally effective. That guy changed his chakra, but he'll still be watching you. And here it's just us, a bunch of useless kids. If I were in his place, I would have finished him off when we were passing through that grove," the brunette muttered. Uzumaki shrugged. "Well, no one said that they wanted to kill you. Besides, maybe he wasn't following us at all. He can't be next to the victim all day long. Or maybe he was sent there to Itachi. And that guy from your clan," Naruto nodded towards the nearest tree, "complicates the situation." The Uchiha on the tree flinched at the look the blonde gave him. "Noticed?" "No way." He just nodded his head in his direction by accident. "Why do we need this trifle?" Sasuke glanced at his younger brother Naruto. Jun lowered his head and pulled it into his shoulders. "Little coward," the blonde said with affection. Jun is an amazing censor. Naruto even stuck out his chest out of pride for his brother. The red-haired boy pulled his head in even more, but now out of embarrassment. Sasuke looked at both Namikaze with distrust, but did not object. "That's great. Now it's time to tear yourself away from this annoying little eyes." The blonde jumped up, grabbing the brunette by the hand. Jun also reacted quickly, keeping up with the elders. They ran into the nearest gateway. Naruto finally threw out something like, "We can cut back here!" so as not to arouse strong suspicion in their annoying tale. The trio's path then lay through the sewers. Sasuke struggled a bit, but he was calmed down with the promise of a box of tomatoes. By the way, the little Uchiha loved them even in this world. After a quarter of an hour of wandering through dirty corridors, since the blonde himself had a very vague idea of their location, they were finally able to get out. It turned out that the pseudo-agents had wandered closer to the outskirts. "No, that won't do. Too far from ANBU headquarters." The blonde turned again, planning to make a wide semicircle to reach safe territory, and at the same time appear as unobtrusive and calm as possible. Like he had chosen this road by accident. Oh, Uchiha's mouth opened in bliss. His gaze fell on the counter with tomatoes, behind which stood a friendly old man. Juicy, ripe, slightly pinkish fruits glistened in the sun. Sasuke's legs turned in the right direction, as it seemed to him. The brunette was unstoppable, and like an icebreaker in Antarctica, he furrowed the streets of Konoha. "Dobe, did you promise me tomatoes there?" Sasuke licked his lips predatorily. Naruto involuntarily cringed. He didn't want to give his pocket money to this idiot at all. And who pulled his tongue? "You're annoying, team!" The blonde frowned and walked to the counter. Before Naruto had time to come to his senses, Sasuke had already squeezed in front of him. "I'll get a whole box. And this one will pay." The boy nudged Naruto in the side. "Why do you need a whole box? And anyway, I don't have enough money." The blonde looked at his beloved, but half-empty frog. "Everything's fine." The old man smiled. "I can lower the price a little for you." "I understand, bye. But I didn't agree to carry your tomatoes." Naruto grabbed the heavy box more comfortably. Sasuke only gave him a puzzled look, but did not tear himself away from the almost ritualistic consumption of the red fruit. Sasuke first admired each tomato for a long time, then carefully bit the skin and slowly drank the juice. Only then could he take the pulp. Still slowly and carefully. "What else do I need you for, Namikaze?" Sasuke grinned. "You're a narcissistic idiot," the blonde hissed. The brunette shrugged and grabbed another tomato. "Brother." Jun tugged his older brother by the sleeve. "Someone has been following us for a long time." Naruto perked up, but managed not to show his excitement. So he was here. And who was it? The guy tried to listen to his feelings. Nothing. Perhaps it was the fact that they were watching Sasuke, and not him. Perhaps back then, in the Uchiha mansion, the bomber was given away only by his thirst for blood. Yes, most likely that was it. Besides, he could disguise himself as an ordinary person with an extraordinary level of chakra. "Kurama, do you feel him?" The fox stirred in his subconscious. It seemed he had fallen out of reality a little. "No. It seems like no one is hiding. Maybe he's just following us down the street. For example, that guy? Or that sexy blonde over there." Kurama watched Naruto's reaction with satisfaction. "Where?" The blonde turned his head sharply. The guy's jaw almost dropped in surprise. A gorgeous girl, about 25 years old, was walking down the street. Long blonde hair scattered down her back, green eyes, a slightly upturned nose. Her lips were painted with light red lipstick. The stranger herself was wearing a short blue strapless dress. Thanks to this, her breasts, quite impressive in size, were almost falling out. "Hold me for." Naruto whispered, "This is a size 5. "You're a blockhead," Sasuke barked, somehow managing to catch the falling tomatoes. "Behave normally." The blonde noticed the attention on herself, and winked provocatively at the boys. Naruto was completely pissed off by this. 3 years alone with Jiraiya would not pass without a trace for anyone. "Hello, boys." The blonde spoke in a soft, honeyed voice. Sasuke grimaced in displeasure. This situation did not inspire confidence in him at all. Naruto, who seemed extremely collected a few seconds ago, now could not shove the drool back into his throat, and June seemed very pale. What the hell was going on here? Hello? Uzumaki straightened up and made a serious face. Maybe we should go for a walk? Naruto, idiot, press on innocence. You're 10 now. Kurama flared up. The fox gets the same sensations as his Jinchuriki. Well, what if they get lucky and stumble upon a pedophile? Exactly. The guy made the most adorable face possible. All is fair in battle. Dobe, what are you doing? Sasuke nudged his friend in the ribs. That's not what we're here for. And put the tomatoes down, or they'll get hurt. Yes, I know. Keep your tomatoes, the blonde scowled, cursing the universe for its injustice. Then his gaze met June's. Naruto winked at his younger brother, and, still smiling radiantly, turned to the girl. Which ice cream do you like more, vanilla or strawberry? I prefer chocolate. The girl smiled. And you? Is she kidding me? And this has to be surveillance. Naruto huffed discontentedly. Killua, that was the blonde's name, was behaving abnormally, to say the least. The girl was making full use of Uzumaki's wallet, walking freely around Konoha and wagging her rounded hemispheres. There was no fault to be found with that. The world is hard and cruel, the fox said philosophically. But every storm will be replaced by the sun, and after every failure, an upswing awaits us. You tell that to Uchiha, the blonde frowned. Sasuke was holding back with all his might. The feigned composure of his clan was cracking at the seams. But the boy can be understood. Here he is, the one who encroached on the sacred, but nothing can be done. The ANBU will not believe him, and they will lock him up at home. You can't go to your ancestors, they are too distrustful people. Especially Fugaku. Well, I'm off, the blonde waved affably at the boys. By the way, don't tell your parents about me, otherwise they might forbid us from communicating. After all, it's not hard to consider me depraved. You really are slutty, Naruto thought skeptically. Yeah, Sasuke spat. See you later. June bowed politely. I hope we will meet again, she said rather affirmatively, and apparently did not need an answer. Of course we will meet. Naruto nodded affirmatively. The brunette remained silent. Tell me, was it her? Sasuke growled as Killua disappeared around the corner. Maybe. And if not, then most likely he works for the same organization, the blonde shrugged. Then why didn't we catch her? Didn't we hand her over to the shinobi? The brunette flared up. They would have interrogated her. If she works for the organization I'm thinking of, even the Yamanakas won't be able to interrogate her. The guy hung his head. We can only establish contact and try to understand her intentions. And what were you able to understand? Sasuke asked coldly. They're not going to kill you, Naruto answered firmly. And also, did she do something to you? Touch you? She was always hanging around me. Naruto looked at his friend with a worried look. Let's go. The blonde grabbed Sasuke by the hand and pulled him towards the alley. June, was there anything suspicious about her chakra's behavior? She hesitated for a second, as if trying to throw off her mask. The red-haired boy nervously bit his lip. Sorry, I didn't pay enough attention then. Could she have used a technique? We'll check now. Naruto turned his friend to face him. Just relax and let me in. The blonde began to form seals. Sasuke panicked, recognizing the seals, but quickly relaxed. The real Uzumaki body went limp. What an old slug! Naruto sighed in surprise, looking around. Sasuke's inner world was in a more than deplorable state. Naruto didn't even have time to be amazed by the sneakiness and meanness of old man Danzo. Fortunately, in the past world Sasuke escorted this annoying jerk to the other world. For this, Uzumaki was sincerely grateful to his friend. But there were more than enough elders. The walls of the younger Uchiha's inner world were completely covered in mind-affecting seals. They were all weak and incomplete, but they would have been enough to shake Sasuke's psyche. On top of all of this, a more complex seal burned brightly. Submission. It seemed that Killua had cast it. The full seal was supposed to consist of 3 phases. So far, only one had been created. Naruto remembered this clearly. It seemed that the guy had stumbled upon something like this in the old catacombs of Root. Sai, who led Root after Danzo's death, even gave his consent to this. Perhaps then Naruto learned useful information for the first time completely legally. "What do you think, Kurama?" Uzumaki asked thoughtfully. "What am I supposed to think?" snorted the fox. "Our sex symbol of Konoha is in trouble. Oh, how he is in trouble. Hey, I'm not unknown either." The blonde got excited. "You should have seen how our fans started a massacre for the title of the most devoted fan club. Half of Konoha died then. But Sakura won." Kurama chuckled. Naruto frowned. "If Hinata were there, I would have won," the blonde answered confidently. Okay, let's get back to our sheep." Kurama capitulated. He had never been particularly keen on protracted quarrels, just like Naruto himself. "I don't think I can remove these seals." "Damn," Uzumaki scratched his head in confusion. "Looks like I'll have to reveal my activities to my father after all. What will he think of me? He'll probably throw me in with the Yamanakas, and they'll find you and tear you apart like a dog." "Oh, forget about those Uchiha," the fox quickly came to his senses. "Who needs those narcissistic idiots anyway? There are so many of them, so what if they kill a couple?" "Oh, I see. I've got it." The Jinchuriki beamed. "Let's push it all onto." Naruto looked around warily. It seemed that there was no one suspicious on the street. The sought-after object was found rather quickly. Sasuke's older brother was walking confidently down the street. "Hello, Itachi," Naruto greeted cheerfully. The brunette bowed slightly, but did not greet him. In their world, Naruto had only briefly met his older brother Sasuke, but now he was sure that Uchiha Itachi's personal fan club could put up a good fight against the fans and admirers of him and Sasuke. "Good afternoon," Itachi finally greeted. The guy seemed to be heading to the Hokage, but Naruto didn't even think about letting him go. "Where's Sasuke?" "At my house." Uzumaki shook his head, driving away the memories of his furious mother. It was scary. "You see, you can't just take the Uchiha heir out for a walk, and even run away from the guards." "Something you want to tell me?" the brunette asked indifferently. Only now Uzumaki realized that it was still worth thinking about their conversation. "Is it okay if no one finds out about our conversation?" Naruto began abruptly. "I have a suspicion that Sasuke's head has been seriously rummaged through." Itachi's shoulders tensed a little. Still, he would do anything for his brother. "So you should check everything thoroughly." "And why such suspicions?" The ANBU officer looked at the boy with distrust. "Kurama, he'll figure me out." "I absolutely can't lie," the blonde howled mentally. "Hold on, my dear." Naruto felt as if he could even see the fox lounging comfortably in his subconscious. Such a pest. "Annoying red-haired ulcer," the guy growled. "Okay, you figured me out," Naruto sighed in agony. "I am a psychic and a seer. I can see secrets hidden in the darkness. And now Naruto was stopped by a decisive movement of the hand of the eldest of the Uchiha brothers. "Enough, I understand." Strangely enough, Itachi did not seem to believe Uzumaki's performance. But who knows, these unbalanced Uzumaki. And it is not so difficult to simply check the subconscious of a stupid Otuto. "Is that all?" "Huh. Yeah," Naruto quieted down. "Killua. Can you find out who it is? The blonde with the fifth size? No last name?" If Itachi was surprised by such a description, he didn't let it be known. "I think this will be enough for you." Uzumaki grinned. "You are a genius, after all." "Quite." Suddenly cracks appeared in the street around us. "TB!" Naruto cried out. Now they were both standing on the same street, only the colors seemed to become brighter. "What just happened?" "It's impossible to lie in my illusion." The blonde even thought that the Manjikyu flashed in Itachi's eyes for a moment. "It's better to be on the safe side. He could have warned me." The guy was righteously indignant. "You see, he's practically working here as Mother Teresa, and look at all the gratitude he gets." "Then it wouldn't have had the desired effect," Itachi shrugged. Naruto grumbled something discontentedly, but agreed with the arguments given. "I'm leaving." "Yeah," but the shinobi didn't even bother to listen to the boy's answer. The Uchiha disappeared into the Shunshin, leaving behind a small cloud of dust. Where did he get Manjikyu from? Naruto asked, puzzled. And how could I lie about his Tsukiyomi then? It's just hard to take it as a lie. The fox replied irritably. More like the babble of a child with raging hormones. And as for the Mangekyo, it seems that what will be, will be. Pfft, what nonsense. And how do you think I won the Fourth World War? Uzumaki chuckled. Well, you're an exception to common sense, the fox concluded with amusement. It's just a shame you've been deprived of intelligence. Hey! Here it is, the front door of the Namikaze house. A gloomy aura hung over the entire building. It seemed that the scolding for the unauthorized walk was not over. Having reasonably judged the situation, Naruto decided to climb into the house through the window. The chakra was still poorly generated, but the guy was able to run up the wall to his window. Suspecting the consequences of the sortie with Uchiha, Naruto did not close the window in the morning. There is nothing of the sort stored in the room, and powerful barriers are placed in strategically important places. The refrigerator, for example. The boy's bright room was a mess and chaos. Kushina sometimes raided this kingdom of oblivion, but it always ended in failure. The next day, the piles of garbage only grew. But unlike the usually noisy house, now it was absolutely quiet. Is there really no one here? Flashed through Naruto's head. Then why is everything so gloomy? Out of pure curiosity, the blonde decided to check the other rooms for inhabitants. Already in the hallway, he noticed light coming from the living room. It seems your dad is the head of the red-eyed ones there, the fox reported graciously. Even from his voice it was noticeable that if it were up to the Biju, he would burn that room down with both men to be on the safe side. Fugaku? What does he need? Naruto was surprised. In the mirror hanging in the hallway, he could see Minato's back. The guy sighed, already more annoyed. They put up a barrier against wiretapping? Too bad. As if that's a problem. The fox snorted. You just have to be careful. The Sharingan is a nasty thing. I agree. Uzumaki quickly began to form the necessary seals. What about the elders? Are they involved in this? Fugaku's voice rang out. It's quite possible, the Hokage replied worriedly. The last few days had been stressful, and Minato couldn't keep his cool any longer. The long absence of sleep was taking its toll. Danzo wouldn't act so openly on his own. Your son dragged Sasuke outside and escaped from the guards, Fugaku said gloomily. Nothing like that, the older blonde man answered tiredly. It was somewhere in the comments, right? Especially for you, the author of that comment to the last chapter XD. Naruto couldn't even notice him. It was your man who made a mistake. It doesn't matter. If my son dies, it will be too late to blame each other. Uchiha barked. I agree. Namikaze capitulated. What shall we do? There is no evidence against these three, and a contract killing is too dangerous for the Hokage. If this comes to light, my trust in the village will be undermined. There was silence. The elders can be dismissed for unsuitability. It's too long to wait. I think we should tighten the guard around your sons and Mikoto, but in the meantime. Who's there? Naruto reacted instantly. Before Fugaku could activate his Sharingan, he dispelled all the seals and silently stepped back, simulating a loud fall. Minato ran out into the hallway. Itada, it hurts! Uzumaki cried out, rubbing the bump. And it really did hurt. Naruto! Minato cried out in relief. Go to your room. Yes, I'm coming. The boy snorted. Already in his room, being on safe territory, Naruto sighed calmly, sliding his back down the cool wall. It passed,